He doesn't chase, he doesn't brag, and yet she can't stop watching. The older Sigma male doesn't make noise, but somehow his silence speaks volumes. While the modern world buzzes with attention-seeking theatrics, men showcasing abs, cars, luxury watches, and motivational quotes, he remains still. He doesn't play the social media game. He's not in a race for likes, followers, or approval, and ironically, that detachment becomes the very thing that captures the attention of younger women. You see, human psychology leans toward mystery. When something or someone doesn't beg to be seen, it creates curiosity. The Sigma male's refusal to compete for validation in a world that worships attention sets him apart. His self-sufficiency, his calm, and his quiet dominance act as a gravitational pull in any environment he enters. But what younger women really sense goes beyond the surface. The Sigma's presence hints at something deeper: wisdom, emotional control, and life experience. Unlike younger men who are still proving themselves, the older Sigma has already walked through fire and come out forged. He doesn't react, he observes. He doesn't chase, he chooses. That stability, that depth becomes intoxicating to those still navigating the chaos of youthful relationships. Studies in evolutionary psychology suggest that women are often drawn to traits signaling security, leadership, and confidence, traits the older Sigma radiates effortlessly, and it's not rehearsed. He's not trying to seduce anyone. His charisma isn't scripted, it's earned. In a world addicted to stimulation, his stillness becomes a novelty, and younger women, consciously or not, begin to lean toward that quiet, unmoved presence. This video isn't about manipulation. It's not a how-to on being magnetic. It's a mirror held up to the men who live on their own terms, unaware that their authenticity is their greatest signal. Welcome to the enigma. Welcome to the mind of the older Sigma. Let's step into his world. Number 1, his emotional control. Younger women today live in a hyper-connected world where emotions swing fast and validation often hinges on the fleeting approval of social media. A single post can bring in hundreds of likes one moment and be forgotten the next. This constant loop of external affirmation creates emotional highs and lows, pushing many into a cycle of anxiety, comparison, and attention-seeking. In this whirlwind of stimulation, the Sigma male stands out, not because he shouts to be seen, but because he doesn't. His power lies in restraint. While others overreact or overshare, the Sigma observes. He doesn't rush to prove himself or chase trends. Instead, he moves through life with calculated stillness, choosing responses over reactions. For younger women who are used to emotional turbulence and the performative nature of modern relationships, this quiet confidence feels like a grounding force. It's not coldness, it's control. It's the ability to be calm when everyone else is spiraling. And that calm presence isn't just attractive, it's magnetic. It offers a sense of psychological safety, something often missing in fast-paced, attention-driven interactions. Neuroscience even backs this up. Humans are biologically drawn to those who help regulate their nervous systems. In other words, a steady presence makes us feel safer, more balanced, and more secure. The Sigma male becomes that anchor. He doesn't feed into drama or demand constant reassurance. Instead, he offers emotional consistency. That makes him not only mysterious, but also refreshing. He is the rare man who isn't trying to impress, he's simply being. And in a world saturated with noise, that silence speaks louder than any words. Younger women, often tired of superficial charm and performative masculinity, are subconsciously drawn to his authenticity. He represents what so many seek but rarely find, a man who doesn't need external validation to feel powerful. He already knows who he is, and that self-possession becomes his most attractive trait. The Sigma male isn't trying to be the hero in someone else's story. He's simply walking his own path, and that unshakable independence makes women want to walk alongside him. Stability in a storm, a lighthouse in the chaos. And while others burn bright and fast, the Sigma glows with quiet intensity, the kind that lasts. Number 2, his focused purpose. He's not drifting, he's not scrolling through life. He wakes up with a mission, not a distraction. That's the quiet power of a Sigma male. The man who operates with surgical focus while the world swims in noise. In a culture overwhelmed by dopamine hits and digital escapism, a man who doesn't chase the next trend but instead chases purpose stands out. His days aren't consumed by scrolling endlessly through other people's lives. They're built on intent, goals, and grit. And that intensity, that laser-like concentration, it doesn't just make him productive, it makes him magnetic. It creates a kind of mystery, a psychological gravity that draws others in, especially women. They can sense when a man isn't seeking external validation, and that's what makes her curious. What drives him? Where is he going? Why does he seem so complete, even in solitude? The answer lies in one core trait: internal direction. Sigma males don't wait for a green light from society, peers, or partners. They move with their own compass. Psychologically, this self-determination aligns with what researchers call an internal locus of control, the belief that one's life is shaped by personal decisions rather than outside forces. This trait has been linked to higher confidence, better emotional regulation, and long-term success. But here's the twist: he doesn't announce it. There are no motivational quotes cluttering his feed, no loud declarations of his next big move. Instead, he's quietly building, learning, training, improving. And that silence, that discipline, whispers louder than any boast ever could. Women may not consciously understand it, but they feel it. Evolutionary psychology explains that humans are drawn to those who exhibit competence, control, and purpose, traits that signal safety, stability, and strong leadership. When she sees a man who isn't thrown off by chaos, who isn't constantly reacting but rather choosing his battles and carving his own lane, she begins to admire him, not for his looks or his charm, but for the way he carries himself, as if he doesn't need to be seen to be significant. His presence doesn't beg for attention, it earns it. And that's rare, especially in a world where most people broadcast every step of their journey. He doesn't need permission to exist with purpose, and that, more than anything, creates an unspoken allure. Because in a society full of men waiting to be told what to do next, he's already moving quietly, powerfully, and unshakably towards something greater. Number 3, his silent confidence. He doesn't need to prove anything anymore, not to society, not to women, and certainly not to himself. That's because he's reached a level of self-awareness and maturity that most men never attain. He's made peace with who he is. And that peace becomes a quiet strength that doesn't need to shout for attention. His silence isn't the absence of power, it's the presence of control. In a world where people often equate loudness with confidence, his calm presence disrupts the noise. He doesn't dominate a room with volume, but with energy, grounded, unshakable, and deeply masculine. Confidence without arrogance is one of the rarest traits in a man. It speaks of experience, of wounds that have been healed, of lessons learned the hard way. This kind of man doesn't chase validation because he no longer sees it as currency. And when a younger woman senses that, when she feels the steadiness of a man who knows his worth without advertising it, she feels drawn in, often without understanding why. It's not about charm in the traditional sense. He's not trying to entertain or impress. It's about something far more magnetic, power without noise. This is the essence of what psychologists refer to as secure masculinity, a state in which a man is rooted in his identity and no longer defines himself by external success or approval. Younger women, especially those tired of boys trying to play men, instinctively recognize this energy. It's safe, but it's also exciting. It's mature, but not dull. It challenges them to rise higher. Unlike performative masculinity, which relies on showmanship, this quiet power demands nothing but commands respect. And that's why she watches him, because his silence says more than words ever could. He doesn't have to prove that he's strong. He's strong. He doesn't explain who he is. Who he is by how he carries himself and how he reacts, or chooses not to. That's the kind of presence that lingers long after he's left the room. Number 4, his mastery over loneliness. He doesn't fear being alone, he chooses it. And that choice doesn't come from bitterness or social rejection, but from a deep-seated sense of self-reliance. This is where the Sigma male stands apart from the crowd. In a world that often equates value with visibility and connection with constant interaction, the Sigma male moves in quiet defiance. He's not addicted to attention. He doesn't seek validation through likes, flirty texts, or being surrounded by people. In fact, he finds clarity in solitude and strength in silence. This kind of man disrupts the normal rhythm of attraction, especially for younger women who are used to more predictable male behaviors. They're accustomed to men who rush to impress, who rely on charm as a crutch, and who fear being alone because it might suggest they're unwanted. But the Sigma isn't playing that game, he's playing his own. He walks through life with the calm confidence of someone who doesn't need to prove his worth to anyone, and that, ironically, makes him even more magnetic. Psychologically speaking, solitude is often linked to emotional maturity and self-actualization, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The Sigma has already met his foundational needs: security, belonging, esteem, and now he seeks something more meaningful: purpose, mastery, and peace. That inner completeness radiates outward, and it doesn't go unnoticed, especially by women. To her, his silence is not emptiness, it's depth. His lack of pursuit isn't disinterest, it's discipline. And his refusal to conform to the usual dating script triggers curiosity instead of frustration. Why doesn't he chase? Why doesn't he flatter her with the usual compliments? Why does his absence feel more powerful than another man's presence? The truth is, the Sigma doesn't need to convince anyone of his value. His restraint becomes its own kind of charisma. It flips the usual dynamic. She starts to lean in. She begins to wonder what he's thinking, what his world looks like, and how she might become a part of it. It's not about mind games, it's about authenticity. And in that stillness where most people grow anxious, the Sigma male grows stronger. While others chase attention, he cultivates meaning. And that's exactly what makes him unforgettable. Number 5, his mysterious detachment. He speaks less, observes more. And when he finally says something, it cuts through the noise like a sharp blade through silk. That's the Sigma male, an enigma in a world obsessed with being seen, heard, and constantly validated. While most men try to impress women with flashy stories, exaggerated confidence, or shallow charisma, the Sigma operates differently. He doesn't talk to fill silence or perform for attention. His silence, his statement. And paradoxically, the less he shares, the more women want to know. This isn't a game of manipulation, it's the natural pull of mystery. Psychologically, humans are drawn to puzzles. We crave resolution. So when a Sigma male doesn't lay his life out like an open book, it triggers curiosity, especially in younger women who are used to dealing with men who reveal everything up front in an attempt to win affection. A Sigma's unreadable nature isn't confusion, it's a quiet challenge. He's saying without words, "You don't get to figure me out that easily," and that's addictive. Neuroscience shows that anticipation triggers the brain's reward system even more than the reward itself. So when a woman interacts with a Sigma male, every glance, every word, and every subtle shift becomes a clue in a bigger mystery. She's hooked not because he's loud or flashy, but because he's different, stoic, self-contained, and unaffected by the usual games. His presence alone changes the atmosphere. It's not about dominating the room, it's about grounding it. Sigma males don't need approval to feel valid, and that independence makes them attractive in a primal, hard-to-explain way. Their vibe says, "I don't need you, I choose you." For women, especially those navigating a world full of superficial attention seekers, that energy is both refreshing and captivating. It's not that they want to conquer the Sigma, it's that they want to him. And understanding someone who doesn't broadcast his emotions or intentions becomes a kind of emotional adventure. Every word he finally speaks carries meaning. Every silence feels intentional. And that's the secret. Sigma males don't try to be mysterious. They simply live with a level of depth and self-assurance, that mysterious by nature. And for a younger woman, that kind of authentic complexity is irresistible. Number 6, his unavailability. He's not always around, and that's not an accident. It's a reflection of a man who values solitude and self-mastery. He doesn't constantly text, not because he's playing hard to get, but because his life is already full, with purpose, discipline, and a relentless pursuit of his goals. Sigma males operate on a different wavelength. They don't seek validation through attention, and they certainly don't build their identity around constant communication. His absence isn't a strategy to lure her in. It's simply a byproduct of being deeply engaged with his own journey. His time is not up for grabs. It's deliberate, invested in growth, reflection, and actions that align with his internal compass. This level of independence isn't common, and it naturally creates a psychological intrigue known as the scarcity effect. People value what's rare. In a world of instant messaging and constant availability, his distance feels unfamiliar, even thrilling. It makes her pause and ask. That question alone can spark a magnetic pull, not because he's trying to impress, but because he's already impressed with himself. And this shifts the dynamic. Women, especially those used to being pursued or placed on a pedestal, start to see him differently. He's not needy, he's not chasing, he's not trying to win her over. He's simply existing in his power. And that power doesn't beg, it attracts. Psychologically, humans are drawn to what they can't immediately have. And this man, by being deeply rooted in his own path, becomes a quiet mystery. She begins to imagine what would it feel like to actually earn a place in his life, to matter to a man who doesn't rely on me for validation, comfort, or direction, but who might choose me anyway. That idea alone can be more compelling than any smooth line or grand gesture. Because when a woman senses that his world won't collapse without her, but he's still willing to make space for her, she realizes she's not being used, she's being chosen. And that's the rarest feeling of all in today's emotionally chaotic dating scene. In the end, he's not trying to prove anything to anyone. He's just living. And in doing so, he becomes exactly the kind of man people can't help but try to understand, follow, and fall for. Number 7, his boundaries are unshakable. She tests him, not because she's cruel or manipulative, but because something deep within her psyche compels her to. It's not always a conscious decision, rather it's an instinct rooted in evolutionary psychology. Women, often without realizing it, may challenge a man's emotional boundaries to gauge his strength, leadership, and self-respect. Will he bend to please? Will he lose himself to keep her? Will he chase when she pulls away? These tests aren't about drama, they're about discernment. A man who reacts impulsively by arguing, pleading, or raising his voice signals emotional instability. But the Sigma male, he doesn't take the bait. He doesn't engage in shouting matches or try to win her approval. Instead, he becomes still. He withdraws, not in weakness, but in quiet power. Because to him, disrespect isn't something to be debated. It's a boundary that speaks volumes. And his response isn't to retaliate, but to retreat with dignity. This calculated detachment is a hallmark of the Sigma male's emotional discipline. He knows his worth, and he refuses to beg for validation. Ironically, this is often the moment she feels the deepest pull toward him. His silence, his restraint, his unwavering commitment to his peace, all of it commands respect in a way words never could. It's not that she fully understands why his absence hits harder than any argument. It's that his behavior taps into something primal. She realizes she can't control him, and strangely, she admires that. Because in a world where most men crumble under pressure, he remains unshaken. And while the test may have been unconscious, the lesson he teaches her about self-worth, boundaries, and the strength of quiet confidence is unforgettable. Number 8, his rare masculine energy. Older Sigma males don't compete with younger men because they've long outgrown the need for validation. While others are still battling to prove dominance or outshine one another, the mature Sigma stands still, calm, grounded, and unaffected. His masculinity isn't a performance. It's not something he wears like a costume or announces with bravado. It's something he embodies. You can see it in how he sits with effortless poise, how he listens without interrupting, and how he remains composed when others would explode. This quiet confidence is a psychological force known as non-reactivity, often linked to higher emotional intelligence and self-awareness. These men have been through enough life storms to realize that real power isn't loud, it's silent, controlled, and deeply rooted. Younger men might flex, boast, or chase status, but the older Sigma knows his presence speaks louder than any words. Women notice it, not because he's flaunting anything, but because his energy fills the room without him trying. It's called embodied presence, and it's magnetic. This is what makes the older Sigma stand out. Not his attempts to dominate, but his ability to be fully himself without apology or need for applause. That is the kind of power that can't be faked. The truth is, he's not trying to attract anyone. He's building his legacy. And strangely enough, that's exactly what makes him irresistible. The older Sigma male lives with intention, directing his energy toward things that compound over time: his health, his finances, his knowledge, and his inner peace. In a world addicted to instant gratification, his discipline is a quiet rebellion. He doesn't crave the spotlight. He doesn't chase social validation or temporary flings. Instead, he's laying bricks for a future only a few can envision. And that's where the paradox begins. He's emotionally unavailable, yet endlessly desired, detached, yet unforgettable. He doesn't play games to be mysterious. His mystery is simply the byproduct of living beyond the noise. Research in evolutionary psychology even shows that traits like autonomy, self-sufficiency, and purpose-driven living are highly attractive, especially to women who seek emotional depth and stability. He's not out there adapting to what's trending. He's refining what's timeless, his values, his discipline, and his calm presence. So when younger women enter his orbit, it's not because he chased them. It's because they recognize something rare, something stable, something magnetic. He's not part of their world. They're stepping into his. Stay focused, stay evolving, stay Sigma.